What's up, everyone? Welcome to another edition of FanDuel Friday. I am your host, TJ Zwarych, joined by my good friend. It's been a while since I've seen him, since we had the amazing Squirrel Patrol joining us last week. TheRealLuuch, Justin Carlucci. How are you doing, my friend?
Good. I can't fill those shoes. Those are some epic shoes to fill. Love Squirrel. Love when we get some Squirrel content. He's so damn good at what he does. So I'm glad you had a more than admirable fill-in for me here. So I'm sure that was a fun show.
Look, hanging out with you and or Dre every Friday is one of the highlights of my week. But in terms of DFS content, getting inside the brain of John Breslin's Squirrel Patrol is always a highlight because he is without a doubt one of the very most profitable players in the industry, probably the most live final appearances by anyone ever. And so it's definitely always a treat getting to do a show with John. So that was last Friday. Let's focus on this Friday. It's baseball season, Luuch. The MLB is here. We got our first dual FanDuel Friday show of both the MLB and the NBA. And despite the MLB coming back in a big way on Thursday, we do just have a small little 5-game slate for baseball. And then from the NBA side of things, we got 13 games. It's been like beautiful, filled with news, 4 to 8 game slates recently. And now we got this big old 13 game, not what you want. There's going to be a ton of news. We got so many Q tags. But before we get into that, let's start off with baseball, because only being a 5-game slate, it's going to be a little bit quicker. You know, it's not going to take us as long to parse through all of these things as it will with the NBA. So off the first look, starting with pitching, what kind of stands out here to you? Because we have Christian Javier and Robbie Ray up top, both picking up over 20% ownership. Ray right now on FanDuel is currently the highest owned pitcher on the slate. Javier, Ray, Lynn, Dustin May, Luzardo, all over 9K, all projected around that 30-point range. Nobody is far and away above from anybody else here. At your first look of pitcher, what kind of stands out to you?
Well, it's the guy right smack in the middle. It's David Peterson. And I have a feeling you're going to piggyback off that based on our real quick conversation prior to the show. Javier probably has the highest ceiling. The White Sox are not a high K team, though, which is fine.
It's just at a certain point with the White Sox. So yeah, let's starting up top here, because I do want to talk about Peterson as well. From an optimal standpoint, because I agree, I think Peterson's probably my favorite tournament pitcher here.
I'm throwing Javier for optimal. Not that I don't like Robbie Ray, not that I have anything negative to say about him, but Cleveland, also another team, doesn't K a lot. And I don't know, right off the bat, do I want the Robbie Ray experience for cash games? I'm not sure. When I can play Christian Javier for just $200 more at like similar projected ownership, that I'm gonna roll with Javier, I think. What are your thoughts on that?
100%. It's an even lower strikeout rate for Cleveland than it is for the White Sox. And despite, like, the nice thing with the White Sox too is they really don't walk very much at all. They're not a very patient team. They got pretty good contact, but they're not a very patient team. And Javier's got such a high strikeout rate, as my cat Shadow comes and makes an appearance here in the show. Javier's got such a high strikeout rate that even if guys get on base today, even if there are a couple singles, maybe even a solo home run or two, he's probably going to get enough strikeouts where it won't matter, because there are some high strikeout lefties in this lineup. And then when you look at the projected lineup we have going, they currently have 5 right-handed bats projected in this White Sox lineup. And Javier had a nearly 40% strikeout rate to right-handed batters last year. That's just insane. So he definitely takes the cake for me as like the top play on the slate. If I'm running a single entry, it's probably still Javier. But from a tournament standpoint, Ray at that ownership, I'd probably want to get off of a little bit. Lance Lynn, sure, he has upside, but going up against Houston, that just scares me too much. Dustin May, maybe. Ton of talent, but a really low floor as well. Jesus Luzardo, ton of talent, ton of strikeouts, but also a really tough power matchup against the New York Mets. David Peterson to me stands out as like a great discount and a nice kind of floor ceiling guy. His floor is not very high on our projections right now, but Peterson is kind of like, what I like about him is he's a lefty who strikes out lefties really well, but facing righties, he actually gives up less power. So facing a team like the Rockies facing a team like the Miami, who, even though it's going to be a ton of righties out there, they're just not very good. There's not a ton of power. This seems like a game where Peterson could easily get the quality start here on FanDuel.
Yeah, I think he has one of the better matchups out of any of these pitchers that we actually want to target. Just to go back to Javier, I think you're right. He striked out almost 40% of right-handed batters, and that, you're going to get 4 or 5 in that White Sox lineup. And 4 doesn't seem like a lot, but it should be enough to give you the comfortable floor with to play Javier and optimal. As for Peterson, I like to look at spring training numbers just to see how much these guys have pitched. He threw 12 innings, which is fine. He threw hold on one second here. Peterson, in one of his starts, got up to 68 pitches. So, I could see him getting into the 80s today, I think, if there aren't a ton of issues. I don't really care about spring training stats unless I see something really nice. He had a 0.00 ERA in the spring. So he had a great spring. The Mets are going to have to rely on him and Tyler Megill now for the foreseeable future to fill that back end of the rotation. So he has a lot of things going for him. He's in a good spot. He probably has a solidified part of the rotation now with the Verlander news. So I think he could put that anxiety aside as well, moving forward. So I think he's going to be ready to go and ready to pitch pretty well today, TJ. So I'm excited. I'm probably only going to play one lineup today because I have some plans tonight. You know how that goes. But I think David Peterson is going to be my guy for tournaments too. And I can't hear you because you're probably on mute or something.
Yeah,
but
hold on,
let me keep talking real quick. Dustin May, I'm like the biggest Dustin May stan. Not today, though. Before his injury, I had him in a bunch of my season-long leagues. His stuff was ridiculous. He was off to a really great start a couple years ago. There were rumors, is he going to be the future closer of the team? Nobody knows. His stuff was that good. Got some work at the end of last season after coming back from Tommy John. His strikeout rate wasn't what I wanted to see. Now, he had a full off season, right? And a bit of a spring here, but I just don't know what his leash is going to be. And the Diamondbacks don't strike out a ton. I like Dustin May as a baseball player. Since we're talking about some of these higher end options, it's not the time to give him a whirl, I don't think. Especially, I don't know what your odds are him getting into that 6th inning to get the quality start on FanDuel. That's a big deal in the first week of the baseball season. Can your pitcher on FanDuel get you into that 6th inning to try and earn a quality start? Okay, I'm done.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you. I don't think I like May maybe a bit more on a different site, but on FanDuel, where he's so closely priced together with some other guys, I don't think I'm going to feel the need to get to him today. Last person I want to touch on is Nick Martinez, just because the Rockies aren't very good and the Rockies are away from home. And so Nick Martinez is a guy that against right-handed bats doesn't really strike too many people out, only a 17% strikeout rate. But he does get a ground ball over 50% of the time to right-handed bats. And then with lefties, he gives up a little bit more power. Not that bad, though. But he also strikes them out a lot more. And you look at this Rockies lineup with McMahon, Moustakas, even Blackman. Like, there are some lefties out there that will strike out and some righties like Crone that will as well. So I don't mind if I'm playing a lot of lineups, I'd probably want to include Martinez in my pool on FanDuel, but that would probably be as low as I'd want to go on this side. I don't think you mess around with anything below that. To me, my main pool would be Javier. I'd include Ray in it, even though I'd try and get underweight on that 25%. Lance Lynn, I would probably be around in the field with that 5-6%. I wouldn't try and go more. May probably a little bit less, around 5%. Luzardo at 15, I think that's reasonable. I would probably try and get there. Merrill Kelly, like if you're running 150, maybe you include him in the pool. But then Peterson and Martinez, I would probably try and get like 20-30% Peterson and 10-20% Martinez in there, like kind of the same amount of I'd be getting to Javier.
Yeah, the Martinez thing is interesting. Another guy with a great spring. Didn't throw more than 46 pitches in any of his starts, though. But he got a decent amount of work in 14 innings, 19 strikeouts, and ERA under 2. I understand it's the spring, and the quality of lineups you're facing aren't great. but it was good to see Martinez string together a couple of pretty good starts. So I don't hate that. I don't know what his leash is going to be. It's funny with how variant baseball is. Yesterday, Blake Snell was doing Blake Snell things. Then he gave up a couple of runs. And before you know it, CJ Cron's optimal on FanDuel, and the Rockies away from home are just pouring it on the Padres, which was crazy. But if you're looking back at historical data, TJ,
don't play lefty pitchers against the Rockies. Play righty pitchers against the Rockies.
That's a fair point. And, just because it happened yesterday, it doesn't mean it's going to happen again. I don't mind Martinez, but David Peterson's my guy today. I'm playing single entry. I'm going to roll him out there, and I'll die in David Peterson Mountain. That's fine. I'm cool with it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you there as well. Let's talk about bats here. Oh, I'm getting excited. I'm chatting with Steve right now, producer Steve. We're making a nice little graphic for Spidey Bombs here in the future. It's baseball season, Luuch. That means the Spidey Bombs are back. I'm going to trust the people. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'm going to need you to hit the like button. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you hit that notification bell. Maybe you're watching this on the RotoGrinders page. I don't know. But if you're watching this on YouTube, please hit the like button. I'm going to trust you doing it. And I think we can give out a Spidey Bomb today on the FanDuel Friday show. Obviously, we're not going to make it somebody obvious like, Juan Soto. We're not going to make it, even though I love me. I meant Yordan Alvarez, but even a guy like Juan Soto, who's going to be very owned on FanDuel today, not going to make it somebody like that. We're going to say on a 5-game slate like today, they're going to have to be for a projected of 20% ownership and under. Looking at some of these guys that I just really love off the bat here, Manny Machado, Kyle Tucker, 2 guys with power that I'm definitely going to be targeting today. But before we get there, let's talk about stacks. No totals over 5. No totals even over 4.5. Every single total on the board is between 3.1 and 4.38 on this one. Really close together. Not expecting a lot of offense. What stacks stand out to you on this slate?
Dodgers lefties. Give me James Outman. I don't think that ownership number is going to be quite that low. Home run in his debut, had monster numbers in the minors. He's fighting with Chris Taylor for playing time, but I really think ultimately that's going to be his job. We haven't projected just 2%. I think that's going to change. I know Merrill Kelly, Team USA, World Baseball Classic. He strikes out less than 20% of lefties. The Dodgers are going to have some contact here. So, yeah, Mookie Betts carrying a huge number on ownership here. Short slate, I get it, but I think you could even play the Dodgers without him. So they're definitely my first look. I know, Luuch is picking the Dodgers, hot take, right? Not really, but, short slate, we're going to work with what we have here. So the Dodgers, some of these, unfamiliar new pieces. David Peralta's on the team now. Where the hell has this guy been? So 2 cheap lefties between Peralta and Outman, I think, are both viable to make some lineups work today.
With a team like the Dodgers, how worried are you about pinch hit risk with some of these lefties later in the game, like Outman or Peralta, getting a guy like Chris Taylor in if a lefty were to pop into the lineup?
Yeah, I'm more worried about Peralta than Outman, I think, especially after, the encore after the homer in his debut. So, plus the young guy, you want to get him as many reps as he can get, at the major league level. So I'm a little more concerned about Peralta, or maybe even Miguel Vargas, who's a new face, kind of filling in for the whole Gavin Lux thing, because obviously Chris Taylor can play multiple places on the diamond. So my biggest fear is probably Peralta. I'm not rostering Miguel Rojas, so I didn't feel like I had to mention him. But other than that, I feel pretty good about it. Freddie Freeman is just sticking out to me today too, man. Really is.
Freddie Freeman, I think, is a great play. But, you can also do this. If you want to play, say you look at this from a pitching standpoint and go I don't think I really like David Peterson today. Javier just has so much strikeout upside. I think I want to eat that chalk and get different elsewhere. Well, you can play the Dodgers today and just fade a guy like Mookie Betts, and you're going to be different enough. There's so much cheap value for these Dodgers. You play Outman, you play Peralta, you play Vargas, and you choose one of a guy like Freddie Freeman, Max Muncy, or maybe you even want to keep it nice and cheap with newly acquired JD Martinez. For positional, my other favorite stack on the board today is San Diego. So say you plug in JD Martinez here at the outfield position, you look at the Padres, you have the salary remaining now because of these cheap guys you played with. You can plug in your Bogarts, you can plug in your Machados. You got $4K left for two positions. You can even plug in a guy like Soto and then try and find an expensive first baseman. So I really, really like the idea of building with the back half of the Dodgers lineup today.
Yeah, TJ, I want to, you mentioned the Padres a little bit, but I think we need to stop at that Cleveland-Seattle game. We obviously have to talk about the kind of unknown pitcher hurling for Cleveland. So I'm thinking some people are going to look towards Seattle. But, we talked about the Robbie Ray experience. This guy's won a lot of people money, lost him a lot of people money. He can literally strike out 8 guys and then blow up, or have a rough first inning and then strike out 8 or 9 guys to close it out. You literally never know. So there's some guys who've had some success against Robbie Ray and hit lefties really well in that Cleveland lineup that I'm kind of interested in. I don't know if you want to start on the Seattle side or if you want to start with the Guardians.
I'll start with the Seattle side because just facing a pitcher like Gaddis today, I do think they have some of the highest upside on this slate. And I'll let you hit the Cleveland side since you have some interest in them. But Cal Raleigh, even on FanDuel, where you don't even have to play a catcher, I think is a great play at the first base catcher position. Jared Kelenic, I think, is very interesting today in tournaments, a guy who can steal some bases with these new rules. Ty France, sure, I think he's fine. Suarez, I don't mind for tournaments whatsoever. But Julio Rodriguez, I think, is going to be one of my favorite spend-ups on this slate.
I can't argue with that either. I was looking up Gaddis. Not a lot of major league experience, struggled in the minors, struck out a lot of guys, but his ERA was like over 4, over 5 at some levels. So kind of like I'm getting Hunter. I'm not comparing the two, but kind of like Hunter Greenish vibes with K upside, but can get hit pretty hard. So I think you're definitely on the right track there. Robbie Ray, like I said, we know his K upside. He also gets hit hard. Like you're getting barrel. When you're hitting the ball, you're getting the barrel. And there's some righties on this Cleveland projected lineup that have success against lefties. Mike Zunino hits lefty fastball. Now I'm using MLB plate IQ at RotoGrinders. Decent batted ball sample size here against lefty fastballs. Mike Zunino has a 480 ISO. Right? All right. Robbie Ray's put out pitch is a slider. I'm going to get crucified for this by some people. Very small sample size of Mike Zunino against lefty sliders and batted balls, but a 750 ISO when he actually hits them. Okay. Go into scoresandodds.com. By the way, we had a huge freaking day yesterday. We were up over 9 units as a team. Oh, maybe I can get Mike Zunino at a really generous home run prop, right? Seems like he hits lefties well. Yeah, if you're a BVP guy, he has 4 bombs against Robbie Ray in his career too. Okay. If you're not a BVP guy, he still hits Robbie Ray's pitches pretty well. Mike Zunino's home run odds are only a little outside of 3-1. I thought it was going to be like 7-1, 8-1. Mike Zunino. We're getting Mike Zunino at the same odds as like these Dodgers. So if that's not telling you Mike Zunino's in a good spot, I don't know what will. So Mike Zunino, GPP play, unless is he actually projected to carry ownership? Oh, he is. 15%. It's all slate. The people know. But I'm still interested.
It's early in the day, though, and 15% isn't that high for a 5-game slate. Can you just one more time for me say Mike Zunino?
Mike Zunino. I also like Josh Bell.
It's a cool name, but also you just said Mike Zunino so many times in 30 seconds. It just like it got it in my head like Mike Zunino, Mike Zunino, Mike Zunino. It just now it's stuck in my head. It's just I can't hear anything other than Mike Zunino. It's such a funny sounding name, and I can't get it out. Movie? Monsters Inc., of course. Pardon me. Oh, that Mike
Let's just call Mike Wazowski.
So Zunino, Wazowski, Mike, great play today. Probably going to hit a home run. Houston, another stack I'm interested in. I think the Mets are somewhat sneaky. I think Arizona against Dustin May is somewhat sneaky today. And then, but like I probably rank my favorite stacks: San Diego 1, Seattle 2, Houston 3, or Dodgers 3, Houston 4, maybe. I think that's kind of how I'd go about it. But then I'm only ranking the Dodgers that high if I am stacking the back half. If it is not the back half of their lineup, then I would rather go with the expensive guys on another team today. Spidey bomb of the day. We said we'll go with under 20% ownership. I feel like that's reasonable as there's somebody up in the 40 range, and there's multiple people today up over 20% ownership. I will go with Manny Machado as my Spidey bomb of the day. Yesterday's was Dalton Varsho. While he did not hit a home run, he did hit a double with 2 RBIs. So definitely not a bad debut of the Spidey bomb. I actually don't have Spidey right beside me right now. He's out saving crime. He couldn't stick around today. We were going to do the FanDuel Friday earlier, but Luuch had to sleep in. No, I'm kidding. He was editing. But I think that basically does it for this baseball slate. Let's pivot over to NBA because we have 13 games.
Oh, gotta love it. Gotta love late season. Who's playing, TJ? You got your crystal ball for me?
Where do we even start?
I guess we just have to note the big names that are questionable or out, which is half the slate. So good luck.
Who's out? I'll go over the questionable ones and how this may affect some of the what ifs and things like that. But Luuch, on such a large slate, who are the highlights of some of these guys that are already out?
All right. And by the way, if you're on RotoGrinders, you can check out the injury report under the NBA tab. As of right now, Tyrese Halliburton out, Lauri Markkanen out, Julius Randle out, Terry Rozier out, Bradley Beal out, Kyle Kuzma out, Jarrett Allen doubtful, Jamal Murray doubtful, which is usually an out, Paul George out, Zach Collins out, Jeremy Sokan out. Now, now the outs are, if you're hardcore into DFS, now these outs start to matter. Jeremy Sokan, DeAndre Hunter, Isaac Okoro, of course, Damian Lillard, if you've been sitting under a rock. So Damian Lillard shut down for the rest of the season.
Wild amount of guys just already ruled out, and so many more Q tags still on the board. Nikola Jokic is questionable after sitting out on the first leg of a back-to-back. Jason Tatum is questionable against Utah. LeBron James questionable against Minnesota. SGA questionable in the first game of the night against Indiana. Kawhi Leonard is questionable, but I think probably on the closer side of probable. He missed the game due to personal reasons, and he's questionable today due to personal reasons, and he participated in shoot-around. So I do think he's on the closer side of probable. Jaylen Brown is questionable in this one. Kelly Oubre is questionable in this one. So many Q tags still. Let's start up with the first game of the night, though, because OKC and Indiana, it's a 4-point spread. It's a huge total. Tyrese Halliburton is already out. Miles Turner is listed as questionable. If SGA is out, if SGA is in, he's a strong tournament play. But if SGA is out, this game just holds so much fantasy goodness with Giddey, Williams, Dort, Joe on one side. And then you look at the other side of Indiana here. Mathurin, McConnell, Nembhard, Buddy Hield, Isaiah Jackson, Jalen Smith, Jordan Nwora, all of these plays could have huge games today.
The Pacers just play in track meet after track meet. Obviously, OKC is a team total north of 120, so that kind of validates that. But if SGA plays, Giddey and Jalen Williams, that's Jalen, are great tournament plays. And if SGA is out, they're going to carry a lot of ownership, and that's definitely where you want to look for optimal. I think you got to play someone from the Thunder. You got to consider, at least if you're playing, 2 or 3 lineups, you got to have some Thunder exposure here. And of course, on the Pacers side of things, we're seeing some price bumps here, so it's really tough to say. I don't want to pay $7K for Buddy Hield. Even Benedict, we're getting to the point where, I'm not really sure how interested I am, but I'm still okay with paying those OKC prices for the better players over there.
I like the idea of playing these Indiana players in a game stack. I'd only play one of Nembhard or McConnell, but both of these guys still have ceilings. Look at what Nembhard's been doing lately. Almost 40 fantasy points last game. And he didn't even shoot the ball well. He's been way more aggressive lately. And when he plays poorly, it's usually because TJ McConnell is having a strong game. And so I do think both of these guys are still in play. Healed, all it takes for him is to just get hot from the 3-point line. And Benedict Mathurin has been being very aggressive lately as well and just playing a ton of minutes. So I think he's absolutely still in play despite that price tag. But the majority of my interest here is going to be on the OKC side. And then the Indiana interest will be if Miles Turner is out, whoever starts between Isaiah Jackson and Jalen Smith. OKC just gives up an absolute ton of rebounds and buckets inside to big men. So I love the idea of playing some Gideon Williams and running it back with an Indiana player or two. Charlotte could potentially provide value with Oubre and Dennis Smith Jr. out. PJ Washington could end up being a great tournament play. One of these bigs could end up having a big game. Maledon played a huge role last game with Dennis Smith Jr. out, so definitely keep that in mind. And then on the Chicago side, you can always play one of the big three, but I don't really have a ton of interest there. Toronto and Philly, not going to have a ton of interest here. I don't think great real life game, but maybe not so much for DFS. Orlando and Washington, a super close spread. The Orlando side has everybody healthy. The Washington side is obviously missing a lot of players. So Kristaps Porzingis is looking like one of the stronger spend up options on this slate, Luuch.
I think backtracking to the Hornets, so we have Oubre and Smith both questionable, right?
Mm-hmm.
PJ Washington, obviously career game, but he's recorded monster usage rates the last week or so. 2, 4, 6. 4 of the last 6 games were his highest usage rates of the season. So I'm staring at that 19.5 points prop, unless they get completely blown out, which is possible. I have interest in PJ Washington for sure, even if these guys are both active. If one of them sits, I would hammer PJ Washington.
The one thing I want to say today, the biggest importance of the day with how much news we have and are waiting for, and with this being a 13-game slate, is don't be playing unless you're playing. You know what I mean? Like, this isn't the night to play and go out. This is the night that, like, oh, you got nothing going on, so let's grind some NBA DFS because I'm going to catch this edge by being more on the news than everybody else. Now, obviously, with this being the first game of the slate, like, we'll know about Oubre and DSJ before lock, but it's pretty simple towards, like, PJ Washington is always a strong play, especially at this low ownership. Great tournament play. But like Charlotte, not very interesting unless you get Oubre and DSJ out, and then they're going to be one of the more interesting teams on the slate. Not just Washington, but guys like Maledon, Svi Mikhailuk as well. Talk to me about Porzingis here. He had some minute scares, but now recently it's looking like that's not a worry anymore. He hurt people at high ownership, so they went away from him, and then he absolutely smashed at low ownership last game. When Washington just dismantled Boston. Today they play Orlando, and it's a 1-point spread. How interested are you in Porzingis?
Extremely. I would think they want to try to sneak in the playoffs at this point. They're probably like not a lottery team, right? They're probably not going to get enough ping pong balls or however it is. Why not? I mean, this guy should be putting the Wizards on their back if they want to try to sneak into this thing. And without Kuzma and without Beal, it should be usage city for Porzingis. So I know his price is a little up there. Things have been pretty volatile, but you really can't ask for like much more of a better matchup than Orlando, all things considered, outside of Houston and maybe Sacramento. Like, you know, there are probably 17 or 18 teams that would give him a much tougher time than Orlando. So I think it's a great spot, TJ.
For what it's worth, the Orlando Magic and the Washington Wizards right now are separated by 2 games in the Eastern Conference. Both of them are outside the playoff games, the play-in games. Washington is in 11th, or the Magic are in 13th. So strategy with what these teams want to do is definitely going to be interesting because both of them are in the ping pong ball situation right now, but they're also so close to the play-in game. So now do you want to try and make sure you're lower than this other team so that you get more ping pong balls, or are you trying to stay in the play-in game hunt? It's definitely an interesting situation, and kind of whichever way these coaches are leaning here, these GMs are leaning here, could weirdly grossly impact this DFS slate. But a guy like Porzingis certainly has an incredibly high ceiling, and if he's going to stay under 20% ownership, I definitely don't mind that. Abdia, I think, is still at a price that you can play him in tournaments. Utah going up against Boston. Taylor Horton Tucker is showing a massive ceiling without Lauri Markkanen. Now, obviously, Kelly Olynyk is back for this one. But I still think Horton Tucker and Olynyk both are in play for tournaments. But my favorite Jazz play is probably going to be Chris Dunn. But my interest in the Jazz is actually mostly dependent on the Celtics, because Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Al Horford are all currently questionable. Rob Williams is already ruled out. If one of Tatum or Brown sits, the other one is probably the best spend up on the slate in this amazing matchup against Utah. If both of them sits, Derek White, Marcus Smart, Malcolm Brogdon, you're going to want to play one of these three in each and every single one of your lineups. So I'd put 1 to 2 of those three in every single one of my lineups. If Horford is out, it's uncomfortable, but the Muscalas, the Cornets, the Blake Griffins, the Hausers, these guys are all going to start playing a ton of minutes. And so Boston, and this is even news we could get before lock with this being a 7:30 game, this is one of the biggest spots on the slate to monitor, because the Utah guys are going to be great run backs to the potential Boston value we have. You're seeing no ownership go to Boston right now with all of these Q tags. But if we start getting 1 to 3 of these guys out, Boston could end up being the best team to target on the slate.
Yeah, I agree. You pretty much nailed it. I like all 3 of those guards, Brogdon, Smart, White, if Brown and Tatum sit, or even just one of them. If one of Brown or Tatum sit, I probably only want to play one of those guards, meaning Brogdon, Smart, or White in each lineup. But if they're both out, I have no problem playing 2 of them.
Yeah, say Tatum sits, I probably make a rule that I play 1 to 2 of, like, max 2 of White, Smart, Brogdon, Brown.
Yeah, I like that.
Like,
I mean,
say
Utah's
that Brown fails in that situation, then there's a good chance that 2 of those guys still go off. If they're
Utah's
both
a fantasy
out,
goldmine. They really are.
If they're both out, then I definitely want to make sure, like, I have at bare minimum 1 of those 3 guards, and then probably still a max of 2, because it'll be tough for all 3 of them to have a big game, and then some of the big man value as well. Such a game, big slates, obviously, just like take notice to the words we're saying and how much we like certain games, but we can't spend too much time on each one individually because of the amount of them on there that are on this slate. But Atlanta and Brooklyn is looking like another great one to potentially target, with not a ton of injury news, but like 121 to 119 total 2-point spread with a huge total. We got to have some interest in this one for tournaments, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And Mikal Bridges, this guy just hasn't stopped since he joined the Nets. So I think he's interesting. Dinwiddie's assist rate has been phenomenal the last 15 games. His potential assist rate has been off the charts. And Atlanta's playing at a top 3 pace in the league since the new coaching change, and they're not playing any defense. So I like this game collectively. I mean, we got a huge total here, a spread of 2 points. So I like both sides of this thing. Look at those PO numbers on the Hawks. 2% Trae Young, a no percent DeJounte Murray, a no percent Clint Capella. Now, I know this will probably change, but this is quite the game to get some pieces for when we're talking large field tournaments.
Yeah, I like that call as well. I'm more interested in this Brooklyn side than the Atlanta side, just because Atlanta's kind of priced up for this situation on FanDuel. Like, they always score a lot of points, and so their prices kind of reflect their roles if you're playing a lot of lineups. Murray and Young, Capella, Collins, I definitely think are all still in the pool, but Brooklyn is definitely the team I'm more interested in from a single entry, 3 entry max, even 10 entry type of setting, with Bridges, Dinwiddie, and Claxton leading the charge. And then if you're running 150, I think you can even include Cameron Johnson in the pool as well, as he has a very high upside if he gets hot. New York without Julius Randle. Look at this right now. We are currently projecting 8 guys to play. What are we doing with the New York Knicks today in a tough matchup against Cleveland? but this is still a close spread without their highest usage guy, without their leading scorer. Brunson, Barrett, Hart, all going to pick up some extra usage. Mitch Rubb, Isaiah Hartenstein can pick up a few extra minutes. Obi Toppin started the second half for him, but he's been priced up. These guys kind of have been priced up for this a little bit, but I think there's still some meat in the bone with some of these New York players.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I'm still interested in Isaiah Quickly. I mean, Randall played the first half pretty much against Miami and quickly logged 31 minutes, scored 39 FanDuel points. I know Cleveland's a tough matchup. They're going to take a hit defensively if Jared Allen doesn't play, though, who's doubtful. So Quickly is just a baller. I love Quickly for tournaments. I think he makes a lot of sense, and I think he's trending in the right direction. So I do have interest in these Knicks. I know Cleveland plays slow. They play pretty good team defense. But we still got almost a 109 team total for New York, and I think Quickly coming in at next to no ownership so far is really interesting.
When you say almost a 109 total, it does feel pretty high, but this is still the second lowest total on a 13-game slate. So Quickly, to me, that seems like a little too cute for like a single entry. But if you're playing 150 lineups, then I definitely love the idea of getting 5 to 10% Quickly. Somebody that has the upside, but you're also not kind of putting all your eggs in that basket for this one. On the Cleveland side of things, Evan Mobley, I still think is somewhat interesting at that price. If you're running lots of lineups, Mitchell and Garland are fine. But outside of that, I don't have a lot of interest here. LA, if LeBron is out, then you can play AD and D'Angelo Russell. Maybe you want to play D'Angelo Russell in tournaments anyways, in a revenge game against Minnesota. But then also keep in mind, if LeBron James does happen to sit, I think Austin Reeves at 6K becomes a very, very strong play for tournaments. On the Minnesota side of things, Anthony Edwards, Karl Anthony Towns, Rudy Gobert, all these guys kind of look all right to me. Towns is starting to play some more minutes, so he's looking like a pretty good play. He's picking up some ownership here. What do you like about Minnesota?
They look all right to me, like you said. Pretty high team total. I don't like all the mouths to feed now all of a sudden. It kind of worries me a little bit. I think my favorite play in this game on this team would be Anthony Edwards, just because I know Towns will probably deal with Anthony Davis and vice versa a little bit more than probably either of them want to. Of course, Gobert.
He'll probably have Vanderbilt, actually.
It's just ridiculous. You have a team with Rudy Gobert and Cat, and you're going to stick hold on. Where is McDaniels going to be? On LeBron if he plays? I mean, yeah. We're probably wasting our time because everyone switches on ball screens anyway in the NBA.
Yeah, but it'll be like McDaniels on LeBron, Vanderbilt on Cat and Vanderbilt, and then Gobert and Anthony Davis, which I do actually like from an Anthony Davis perspective.
I like Anthony Davis too. I mean, Gobert, former defensive player of the year. I just, he likes to hug the basket, and I don't know if he can really stick a guy like Anthony Davis who wants to operate around the elbow. So I like Anthony Edwards gun to head, I think, favorite play on the Minnesota side, but I think Anthony Davis is really appealing at sub 5% ownership, TJ. I wouldn't call him my favorite play in the slate. I don't know if I'd play him on one lineup, but if you're multi-entering, and God bless you if you are tonight, it's super easy to have a little bit of leverage with Anthony Davis.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think AD is a tournament play. It gets even better if Braun is out. Throw in D'Angelo Russell and Austin Reeves in there as well if LeBron happens to be out. And then on the Minnesota side of things, Edwards, Towns, Gobert, all strong tournament plays. Maybe even mix in somebody like a Kyle Anderson in there. Just don't play multiple of them, I don't think. Maybe you can play two of those guys if LeBron's out and you're running it back, but this feels like a game where a couple people from it could have a really big game, but you're not looking to do a full stack. Detroit and Houston is going to be a super interesting game because these are two awful teams and there's no defense who are going to that's going to be played. And so Ivy and Hayes in the backcourt look interesting. We're currently projecting 25% ownership for Hayes and less than 10% for Ivy. So for tournaments, I love the idea of just flipping that. All of these bigs, I think, have tournament upside if you're MMEing, but in a single entry, I wouldn't be wanting to touch them. On the Houston side of things, Porter, Şengün, Jalen Green, Jabari Smith, Tari Eason. If Kenyon Martin Jr. does not play, then I think Tari Eason becomes very interesting as well. All four of those guys, I actually think, are awesome tournament plays today.
I really can't fault you for any of that. I think you pretty much nailed it.
Houston's locked into place and their starters play a lot of minutes, and Detroit is absolutely terrible. Like, if there's any team worse defensively than Houston, it's Detroit. And so especially if you get Kenyon Martin out for this one, like, this is a gold mine on Houston.
I agree. It's hard to say whether it's going to be Porter or whether it's going to be Jalen Green, but both of them have 50-point upside, especially in this matchup. So
yeah,
I think they're super interesting, and this is a game that's probably going to go overlooked, like you said. But I think I'm definitely interested here. I think the Detroit side is a little bit murkier, but Jaden Ivey has been balling, and as long as he's getting over 30 minutes, especially in a matchup against Houston, I'm interested.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I honestly don't think Ivy and Hayes should be projected this close together. I think we should be projecting Ivy for at least 5 or 6 more points than Killian Hayes. So as this stands right now, I just absolutely adore the idea of maybe playing Jaden Ivey in tournaments, running it back with one of Jalen Green or Kevin Porter, one of Şengün or Jabari Smith or Tari Eason. And doing a bunch of variations of that if you're running lots of lineups. I think that's fantastic today. LAC and Memphis, huge total. If we get Kawhi Leonard probably will be back. So I think he is a very interesting tournament play at low ownership today against Memphis. With Kawhi back, all these other guys are priced up. I don't think I want to touch a single other player on the Clippers except for maybe Norman Powell. Powell came back last game after injury. He played 24 minutes. If this could get extended a little bit, I think he's got some upside, but I think that's still a 150 max type scenario. Memphis getting all of their guys back here, and with all of their guys back, I don't think I really have interest in any of them except for maybe Desmond Bane at 7,600. Like, if Jaw's actually going to pick up like almost 20% ownership on a 13-game slate, that's just somewhere that I definitely want to get away from in tournaments, even though it's a great matchup against Russell Westbrook. I still just like, there's so many options on a 13-game slate. I don't think I want to pay 20% for pay a 20% ownership fee for Ja Morant.
Yeah, I don't mind Ja in this spot, but ownership's creeping up there. Point guards have been absolutely dookying on Russell Westbrook since he's been with LA. So I do get that as well. But there's so many spots in this slate. I wouldn't fade Ja if you're multi-entering, but I'm kind of indifferent here.
San Antonio and Golden State has a 18-point spread. 130 points here for the Golden State Warriors. We're currently projecting to have so we got Sohan already out here. Vassell is questionable. Maybe some of these Spurs plays end up getting lots of minutes and look okay. We're projecting for Mamu Kelishvili for 31% ownership, almost 30 fantasy points, looking like a great value as a guy who's going to play in a blowout or not. Maybe somebody like a Devontae Graham gets time and goes off. I do think this is a very interesting team for large field tournaments to get exposure to some of these guys like a Devontae Graham, but I think in a single entry or cash game setting, you're looking at Mamu or nobody else. And then on the Golden State Warriors side, the only way I play any Warriors today is with runbacks. Just like if I'm in a large field tournament, play Keldon Johnson with Mamu and run it back with Steph Curry, something like that. And just, wow, somehow San Antonio kept this game close. That'd be the only way I'd play anybody on Golden State today. It's also the only way I'd play anybody on Sacramento today is if I'm running it back with multiple Portland players. Sabonis and Fox, I think, are interesting in tournaments if you do that. Malik Monk, I think there's still some meat on the bone there if you're running 150 lineups. Portland side of things, they have everyone out. So you're probably playing a lot of these guys, even on a 13-game slate. Watford is questionable. He might come back here. We're currently projecting him for 50% ownership. That feels a little bit crazy. Drew Eubanks at 5.6. We're with the power forward and center eligibility, getting almost 30% ownership. Same with Kevin Knox, both strong plays. Nasir Little, almost 70% ownership projection early in the day. These will probably fade out as more people are ruled out and more value spreads out throughout the day. As that stands right now, Little is definitely one I'd want to just kind of lock in cash games and then get underweight on that in the field. But then I think guys like Thibault and Shaden Sharp are very interesting for tournaments.
Yeah, that's such a big number for Little. For tournaments at that price now, I think I'd want to be underweight on Little. But for cash games, I'm with you. I just want to backtrack just real quick, and then we can even just fast forward after I say this. But
look at these last two games, even playing 39 minutes last game quick. If Nasir Little is actually going to stay at 60% ownership, I think you hit the X button in tournaments.
It's viable. Everyone has their own take on what to do when guys are coming in at that high of a number. You say X button, I say underweight. So I think consensusly we would be light to some degree on Nasir Little's exposure. Just say dealer's choice there with what you want to do. I don't know if that Golden State game is going to stay close to ridiculous spread, but the bottom line is they have to keep winning to stay out of the play-in tournament. They are one game up. That's it. So they're treading water right now. If this somehow is competitive to some degree, at least for 3 quarters, Steph Curry could really break the slate. I mean, it's not the likeliest of outcomes, but this is not a snooze fest for Golden State. They have to keep the pedal down. They don't want to be in that play-in tournament, right? They're the current 6th seed. So Curry's really interesting. I think if I'm playing large field tournaments, I definitely would want to get a little bit of leverage there. And super easy to do. We haven't projected at 6%? Double it. Go 12% and you're still looking pretty good. Okay, moving on.
Talk to me about Portland. Who do you like outside of obviously we're not liking Nasir Little, but where do Knox, Eubanks fall on your priority list today? Watford if he plays. And then what do you think of the Sharp and Thibault in tournaments calls?
Kevin Knox, just indifferent. I like the Sacramento matchup. Shaden Sharp just keeps playing minutes. Doesn't matter if it's a blowout or not. I think he ran over 40 minutes the other day, and the game was out of it. So I think Shaden Sharp's kind of blowout proof. The price is up there, but I think it's warranted. We've seen his ceiling, which is crazy. So if we're not really worried about a blowout with his role in this team, I'm probably the most interested in Sharp, despite his huge price bump there. Tough kind of pill to swallow, paying $7,700 for a guy you might not have heard of 3 months ago. Here on a slate, but the matchup with Sacramento is good, and if his role is solidified, this is late season NBA at its finest.
If you can't swallow those pills, you should not be playing DFS at the end of the season. Denver has the lowest total on the board. They're playing Phoenix. They're probably going to get pumped. Durant is back. Booker is playing. Paul is playing. Ayton is playing. Denver doesn't stand much of a chance here, I don't think, because they're going to have Jamal Murray already out. It looks like Nikola Jokic could sit as well. If Jokic plays, he's all the way up at 12K. I mean, if you want to try and get 5% of Nikola Jokic or 10% of Nikola Jokic in tournaments, I don't fault you whatsoever because he absolutely could have a huge game if he happens to play in this spot, especially without Jamal Murray. But I feel like the guys I would be looking to get the most of in this spot would be the Bruce Brown types.
Yeah, and so, okay, if you're multi-entering, let's just hypothetically say that Jokic doesn't play and Murray's doubtful. So I would take Aaron Gordon or Michael Porter Jr. or some of these other pieces and use them as conditional players. So wherever a couple of my sons are, I don't just have random Denver pieces floating around in case this game gets ugly. Phoenix is another team that needs to keep the pedal down, TJ. They're hugging the 4 seed. They're only a half game up on the Clippers. So now it gets important as to who's playing for what, right? So Phoenix wants to hold on a home court advantage in the first round on that 4 seed. You don't want to be playing at LA. You don't want to hypothetically be playing in Golden State. I mean, it's just crazy how close the West is, where 2 games separate 2.5 games separates 4th place and 8th place. So these teams are still playing for quite a bit. Denver is most likely pretty comfortable in the 1 seed there. So that's not really too worrisome on the Nugget side of things. So I think maybe we'll get a rest day if I had to guess right now. But I still think there is, opportunities to play Aaron Gordon here as long as you're attaching them with some Phoenix pieces, because we know the Suns need to keep winning. That's for sure. Devin Booker's been pretty damn good, even when Kevin Durant's been playing, TJ.
He's almost been better when Kevin Durant plays. Just so much more opportunity for him to do whatever he wants without a double team. That covers MLB, that covers NBA. Let's swap it over to NHL. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, I would have cut you off right there.
That does it for another edition of FanDuel Friday. We got MLB for the first 20 minutes, NBA for the next 30. We could go through these things again, but this isn't a live video. This is recorded. You guys can just go back and look at whatever you want. So we don't need to summarize this. Let's get out of here, Luuch. Anything else for the people before we go?
No, just enjoy your weekend. Make sure you stay tuned to RG with all the breaking NBA news. Put those push notifications on. There's a ton of premium content. Our guys with the shows tonight, Grinders Live and Crunch Time, they got their hands full for their respective sports tonight. So short MLB slate, which is nice, but we'll have content all weekend. Check out Scores and Odds if you're into betting. Our premium picks were absolutely awesome yesterday for MLB. We had over 30 picks on the board, so it was a lot of fun. And if you're sick of playing DFS at this point of the NBA season, we still have a bunch of prop bets and money line picks over there at Scores and Odds for NBA too. And of course, my last plug for Scores and Odds is the Final Fours this weekend in college basketball. So we have some things on the board there as well. We know the good players are playing in the Final Four games. That's for sure. We don't know about the NBA games though, TJ.
It's true. That's very true. Thank you so much to FanDuel for sponsoring the show. Thank you all for tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit that like button. I got tonight off, luckily for this 13-game NBA slate, but I'll be on MLB Crunch Time both Saturday and Sunday this weekend, as well as the expert surveys for MLB and NBA. So make sure you check those out. You can follow me on Twitter at TJ_ZWARYCH5. Thanks so much for tuning in, everyone. We'll see you next week. Peace.